hope you're all well caffeinated and that you're ready for the next fireside chat here with myself, Mihai, and Robert. We're gonna speak about value in DePIN. My name is Mihai. I run protocol research at Messari. I focus on DePIN, and if you're wondering when DePIN actually started to become more popular, it was actually in 2022 when Ryan Selkis had a survey in Twitter trying to establish a term, an acronym for the whole field. And it turned out that DePIN was preferred by most of the people. So here we are at the DePIN event, which is quite special, and I'm very happy to see you. Together with me, I have Robert. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Robert. I'm with 1KX. I'm a researcher, mostly doing economic and token design. But my area or domain of research used to be or is DePIN. That's why also us two want to chat a little bit about the value and the current state of DePINs from an economic lens. And why don't we jump right in and start with the first very high-level question, maybe for you, Mihai. How would you basically define value, or how do you see the value of DePINs?
Yeah, so I think as many things in life, defining value is actually hard, but I think it's value is actually in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder here can be either the market, or can be the users, or can be actually the ecosystem participant. So if we move along, we prepared a couple of slides here, from the perspective of the market, so everyone is interested in the market value of DePIN. So at the moment, we're somewhere between 50 to 60 billion. However, DePIN is projected to grow about 100x from now, so not really 1kx, but 100x from now to around 3.5 trillion by 2028. However, we're not here today to speak about market value. We're here today to speak about economic value, and especially about how value is actually being created, and also how it is being captured. So if we move along value creation, there we can see that in order for businesses to actually gain traction, to gain adoption, they have to be 10x better, cheaper, faster. So we've prepared one example of a better business, so essentially having great coverage out there, in terms of network coverage. But then at the same time, if you think in terms of cheaper, we have examples out there in terms of video transcoding, in terms of decentralized compute, in terms of decentralized storage, where DePIN achieved already 10x cheaper mark. All right, moving forward, I will give the word to Robert with respect to some considerations on how actually value is being captured nowadays and who captures that.
Okay, thanks. When talking about value capture, for me there's two considerations. It's a little bit about like who captures the value, and then also like how can you capture the value. Maybe when we think about the who first, let's maybe take a step back and understand, like, in any DePIN, if you dissect them a little bit, like Vuk earlier also started diluting into that, into the different functions or roles that any DePIN has, it pretty much can be put into this diagram here. And let me quickly walk you through what I mean with the service node in the middle, right? These are the guys, the storage providers for Filecoin, right? They provide the hardware, they provide the service essentially that the DePIN has. But then whatever they do, typically or ideally, right, there's a user who wants to store something. And so they request some work, they request some service with a service node. Then, however, since it's decentralized, anybody can do it. So how can the user know that the service node actually did the work? Well, there's a validator or watcher role that does that. And typically, the whole thing is tracked with a decentralized ledger, right, the blockchain. So this is the accounting layer. However, the accounting layer is not just the blockchain because it also includes the accounting logic, which kind of like says like, how do you actually aggregate and store these track records of work and payments, right? Because ideally also the user then pays for the service. And there's two more roles on here. Sometimes networks decide to even add a little middle layer between the user and the service node, which is a gateway. And which is just like some orchestrator, or load balancer, as you can imagine. And yeah, some networks, or a lot of networks, have staking mechanisms, and then there's this like delegation function. So this delegator role also comes into play. But yeah, talking about capture, sorry to interrupt. When you go through these, is a little bit like, first of all, the user kind of like pays to the service node. If there's a direct connection, then the service node actually is able to capture the value, right? Gets the value. The validator typically, doesn't capture much unless sometimes, like Filecoin, for example, storage providers are both the service node and the validator. They have both function combined, so technically the validator also captures value. The accounting layer captures some value in forms of transaction fees, but here Filecoin has a proprietary blockchain, so Filecoin network gets something of that. Other ones use Arbitrum, LifePair uses Arbitrum for settlement, so this goes away because it's outsourced basically, right? It goes to the Arbitrum sequencer, not to the LifePair network, which is fine, right? It's just like this is the way it is. And maybe as last point, in lots of DePINs, I would argue nowadays, there's even the user capturing most of the value because we're on the monetization front. If you look how things are priced, they're super, super cheap. So the most value is actually if you're a user and you just request a service. If you store on Filecoin, it's, I don't know, Vuk probably knows the exact prices, but it's probably roughly zero. I don't know. So yeah, long story short, I think when I talk about who captures the value, I would say it's kind of like right now the person who has the point of sales with the user. And it's either the user himself because the prices are so cheap, or it's a gateway or the service node who kind of like directs the work. Well, yeah, I interrupted you, sorry.
I actually wanted to ask you one question. So I agree that on the user side, you have a race to the bottom when it comes to cost for the end cost for the user. But in terms of like the network or in terms of the protocol, who actually captures most of the value here? Is that the service node? Is that the gateways? Are those the delegators, validators? Who is actually percentage-wise the actor that captures most of the value?
Yeah, that's tough. I would say that really depends on the network and the network architecture, right? Because again, there are networks that don't even have a gateway, and then in that case, it is kind of like the service node. Gateways are a very interesting concept, and we might get into examples where if you look at Hivemapper, Demo, Pocket, they have gateway functions, and these gateway functions are the ones that monetize. Demo are the ones who like collect the data from the service nodes, like the AutoPIs and the cards that generate the data. But then Demo Gateway, which currently is run by Demo, the company basically, makes sure that they sell it to whoever wants to buy the data. Similar with Hivemapper. So that's why I would say currently value capture is happening on the gateway. However, the caveat to all of this is like we can probably also debate a little bit, okay, how much value is there actually to capture right now? And I don't know if you want to go more into the how to capture value actually.
All right, so we've seen the intricacies of who captures value. So we were thinking to go over one specific example about both Robert and myself have been thinking about. We've picked this specific example because it is just very, very interesting from the perspective of both value creation and value capture. And here we can see Pocket Network. We also have thoughts about many other networks out there, but Pocket was one of the first ones having something interesting out there. So if you look at the black or like the gray line, which is picturing the number of nodes, you can clearly see in the beginning of the network's life that they started to pick up over time up until they reached an upper limit. And as many other DePINs, what happens is that you use tokenomic incentives in order to be able to bootstrap the supply out there. So that's why, yeah, the number of service nodes increased up to a specific level. And then very interestingly, with the green line, we have the total number of relays there. In other terms, the relays actually signify what is the demand for the services offered by Pocket. And you can see that the green line pretty much follows the supply. And in this case, Pocket has been able to bootstrap the supply to a specific level, and then the demand over time followed up or like caught up on this. However, what we can see is around Q3 or Q4 of 2023, something interesting happened, and you can see like a drop in the number of total relays out there. So Robert is smiling, so I'll give him the word on explaining what actually happened over there and what are some of the more intricacies of the mechanics behind that.
So you get the positive part, I get the negative part. Yeah, what happened there, right, is something that I think a lot of DePINs actually face. Is this, up until then, it looked very much like the DePIN flywheel story everybody will tell you of like, bring in the supply, ramp it up, it's ample, it's good UX, people will come, will use it, and that's what the green line also showed. The one thing that you need to keep in mind though is, when we talk about value capture, is utilization demand is not the same as monetization, right? Just because people use it doesn't mean they also pay for it. And here we said, like in Q4 actually, what happened is the Pocket Network decided to say, look, we had very generous free tiers until now, let's stop that and let people pay more for it. And you can see what happened to the demand. It dropped significantly, it stabilized, but this is something for sure to keep in mind, right? Really important value capture. Just because you have like trillions of users or whatever of requests, if they're not paying, you can ask yourself, okay, how can I capture value, or what might happen then? And yeah, maybe to move on that topic, when we talk about value creation and value capture, the question I alluded earlier on is like how to actually capture value. And there's an interesting topic that typically people don't like to talk about, other than Vuk, who mentioned cost. And this is cost, right? And Pocket Network had something very interesting, which I would see as like a transition topic between value creation and value capture, because if you can create a supply on very efficient cost base, this is better value creation than just creating the supply, right? And here, maybe just to show you what this red line means, it's some cost estimation that we did. No worries, we'll soon share more details on that, how we did that. But for now, just believe me that the numbers are somewhat okay. And as you can see, right in the beginning, incentivize the node count, supply goes up, cost of the network goes up, because more nodes means also more cost, because each node has the same cost, roughly, or right, caveats aside. But then node count goes down and the cost go down. And this trickles down until, yeah, Q3 in 2023. And then you see a drop, actually. And the interesting thing that happened actually in 2022, early 2023 is the Pocket Network. There was huge discussions that the node operators realized, oh, we have all these nodes, but we're running very inefficient because, you know, we don't get any income. We only get tokens, and the token price goes down. We're running red. So what they did, they realized, okay, we need to be more efficient. They figured out a bunch of initiatives, GeoMesh, Lean Pocket, etc., and made their nodes more scalable. And so the cost per node went down dramatically. So that used this first drop. And yeah, just the second drop even followed afterwards, because as I alluded earlier, there's this gateway function, which is kind of like funneling in user requests for relays and then passing it out to the node runners. And this was one function operated. It was operated on GCP, and this is very costly because, you know, tons of egress volume is like how bandwidth cost doesn't scale. but they started to decentralize it, and that helped reducing the cost even more, and also sets them up to now even scale.
At the same time, as we see the decentralization of gateways, one can also overlap the decrease in the number of relays served. Can you explain a little bit more over there? Why do you see that correspondence between the two of them?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like happening at the same time, right? They decided to say, okay, we want to stop with the free tiers, because when you just have one gateway, you can say, okay, it's our gateway, we have the free tiers. But now we open up to more gateway operators, and then it's like, okay, I have a gateway, you have a gateway, who decides to give out the free tickets, basically? So then you say like, okay, let's both of us not be able to give away free tickets, but instead we say, you know what? If you're running a gateway and you're running a gateway, you can sell this service at any price you want. You can give it away for free if you want, but the back end, the service nodes in the back end, you pay them a fixed price, 85 cents, I believe, for 1 million requests. And this way, again, talking about value capture is a nice mechanism, because now what happens is like the Pocket gateway run by the network early on was outsourced. Like the sales team is outsourced. You say like everybody can become a sales team. You can make the prices, you can make the deals with whomever you want. But the network, the infrastructure you're using, you pay us a fixed price. And yeah, this is basically what all happened in Q4. Yeah, just for information, this blue line is roughly what you can think of, because decentralized gateways also means we don't know exactly how much they charge, because there's several gateways. What they price, I don't know. But when you look at market prices, it should be in the range of the blue line here.
All right, so we see here that we have mostly like the red surface signified the costs, and we can see that the costs continue to go down over time. However, what is interesting is the blue part, yeah, down the chart out there, and the blue part also exhibits some novel behavior over there. So we can think in terms of demand, and we can think also in terms of actually, yeah, revenue or fees accrued. Can you relate both the costs to actually the revenue, the monetization that is happening currently in Pocket?
Yeah, this is, oh yeah, sorry for all the lines here. But essentially the blue line is what the gateways potentially charge. I mean, they can take a price of $5 per million requests. That's the solid line. You know, in Fura Alchemy, they are even more expensive. Or you can take $2.5, then the dashed line. But what's really more important is that this black line at the bottom. This is the 85 cents that they will pass to the service providers. So that's basically the cost of the gateway of reselling the services, so to speak. And you know, this is burned, that doesn't matter so much, but this is essentially the income to the service nodes, because they have staked Pocket and they benefit from that. I think, I'm not sure, are we on time actually? But one thing I feel very interesting, once you make these exercises of like, okay, who are the participants, who creates the value, who can capture the value, how can we even adjust our model, right? Like Pocket adjusted the model over time. Now they have these decentralized sales teams, their gateways. You know the cost base, they made their cost base efficient. Now you can say, okay, currently I think Pocket has like 350 million relays per day. Let's say it's 500 million and say it's 5xing. And take some price of like $5 per million requests that they do. Obviously, if you scale up your demand, your cost base also increases. Ideally, not so much, then you did a good job. And here it actually happens, right? The service nodes, we talked to a lot of node runners, they told us like, yeah, they can scale up without much additional cost. The main cost driver when you scale up is bandwidth, because egress volume, you know, it basically is linear. So this is what puts up this like red dot there. But as you can see, the positive news is like, okay, if you can basically have the red dot there, the blue dot is still above. So technically at that point, the network as a whole is profitable.
Okay. So you say 5x in demand equates to profitable network. Now we have various players in the network. We have gateways. We also have service nodes. Is it going to be profitable for everyone?
Yeah, well, yeah, no. That's what it says here, right? Like this is our first attempt to just understand like when is the network as a whole profitable. There's obviously still like so many actors. I mean, there's like over 100 service node providers. Each have different cost profiles, so you can't tell for sure each one. But also you're like, okay, the gateways, if they sell their service for like $5 per million requests, they need to pay 85 cents in the back, plus they have their gateway operational costs, which typically will be largely bandwidth. From the modeling we did, we understood like, okay, they will likely be profitable if they can charge a $5 cost. The service nodes, however, their operational costs, as you can see, is this empty dot, the empty red dot. They will only get 85 cents, which is the very bottom of this blue line. So they will still be in the red overall. However, I strongly believe that larger node operators who are like have very good economies of scale will be profitable at that time. It's more like the smaller fish that might not be. But yeah, I mean 5x. As you said, like 100x is the goal. So at that stage, everybody's profitable for sure.
Yeah, so by 100x, probably most of the networks will become profitable. However, to reach 100x, there has to be more out there in terms of monetizing the services. So I think currently most of the DePINs monetize their services through a fee. However, do you have any considerations on what are other monetization avenues for protocols out there?
I mean, yeah, first of all, really, I like this idea of just like decentralizing your sales teams. I mean, sales teams at all is like something no one talks in DePINs, I would say. I think in the early days, Filecoin maybe had some sales departments. But this is something where really, when we look back at the roles, right, DePINs so far have been really good in orchestrating the work, the supply, coordinating everything. And I know, it's a heck of a job to do that. But as also a previous speaker said, like, okay, we are at that stage now. Now let's think about, okay, how can we foster demand? And yeah, putting an incentive model like gateways is one way. The other way is for sure also expanding your product offering. Pocket does that, right? They don't only serve RPC relays now, it only goes towards AI inference. AI inference is typically the one piece everybody goes now. Like LivePeer just yesterday announced the AI subnets, which is similar. Right, you can no longer only do transcoding jobs with LivePeer, you can even do AI inference for video generation and image generation, because they have all these GPUs laying around anyway. So this is another avenue I like a lot, that DePINs expand basically their offering to foster demand. But yeah, down the road, it will be interesting to see, because I agree that probably, if we talk about 10 years down the line, the service fees that you can charge will go down. So you need to constantly find ways. But again, I like the idea, just say, me as a protocol, I maybe don't need to worry too much. I outsource it to sales team, and they can worry about that.
Right, so you've heard it from Robert. Yeah, over time, actually, the cost of technology tends to go down, tends to go to zero. And essentially, we believe that most of the service fees are going to become smaller and smaller. And especially if they are charged for commodity services, they are going to go close to zero. So the importance out there is to come up with value-add services that are added on top of the typical infrastructure play. But yeah, we see already several projects out there doing this quite successfully. So yeah, with that being said, I would like to ask Robert, what do you think are some departing thoughts for you? So after studying together Pocket and also having some other networks in the pipeline, studying them in a similar fashion, what are some of your departing thoughts and some of your recommendations for protocols?
Yeah, I mean, if you're building, I mean, it's for sure, it sounds simple, but it's like, the one-on-one is really focus on like scalability, efficiency early on. You know, if you're lucky, or like any DePIN likely has this like input of like early on token rewards, you can spend a lot to incentivize your supply side. But this is why it's important to really go into understanding your cost base, monitoring, understanding the biggest cost drivers. Sometimes it's obvious, right? Live peer switching from Ethereum to Arbitrum as settlement layer and reducing this cost by over 90%, fine, right? That's an easy call, but you really need to be ample on this one. But yeah, other than this, really think about leveraging other DePINs, think about the functions in your DePIN, and really think about, do I need to do it myself? Do I need to build myself? Or is there something out there that I can leverage or that I can even incentivize to do? But yeah, with this, I guess we're also out of time. Obviously, if you have more questions, you know, hit me up. I'm happy to help with any design questions or whatsoever. Yeah, the contacts are here. I'm not sure if you still have time for questions.
All right, one question.
Okay. Anybody else than Vuk?
Why, Robert, you don't like the hard ones? So how are you thinking about token lock, burning, and in general, like, the role of the token holder that is actually like enabling these economies?
Can you speak up a bit?
Yeah. How are you thinking about the token holders that are actually enabling like all of these economies to be sustainable? How are you thinking about burn, lockup, balancing this out in order to not create coordination issues and so on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, right? Like, where's the token holder fitting in? And here I'm coming back to the roles and the function that you want to have people to do. And they are very widespread, right? I mean, you can expect them to do governance. You can expect them to delegate to help securing the network. Maybe you just expect them to hold or provide liquidity. Again, you just need to be sure what you want to expect from them, because if you just want them to like be rarely passively hold and still benefit from doing so, which is a design decision, then a burn mechanism makes sense, because if you burn token, you're basically benefiting everybody, right? Because the supply goes down for everybody in the same fashion, right? However, this also means like, yeah, that means if you want to reward specifically stakers, if you want to reward specific actions, burning is probably not the best tool, because again, you're not rewarding a specific crowd, a specific user base, you're rewarding everybody in the same fashion. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I agree on the burning aspect, and I think for token holders, the best thing that they can do is to actually stake, and yeah, to have skin in the game, because when you're staking, you're actually not getting diluted by monetary inflation by essentially issuing tokens. So I think probably this is the best thing that they can do. They can start with, and then afterwards, yeah, being up there in the discussions, in the forums, and voting.
Excellent. Well, let's give a round of applause to Robert and Mihai. Thank you, guys.